In this video, we'll be taking a look at 3 NBA games happening on January 24, 2026, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 6 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 3 NBA games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start: if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Boston Celtics versus Chicago Bulls. The Boston Celtics roll into the United Center on Saturday to face the Chicago Bulls, and it has that sneaky, tricky feel where the schedule and fatigue matter almost as much as talent on paper. Boston is coming off wins over the Pacers and the Nets, with the Trail Blazers waiting next, and they have still taken 20 of their last 28 games, which is a strong stretch by any standard. Chicago, meanwhile, just beat the Timberwolves and Clippers, has the Lakers on deck, and has quietly won 13 of its last 21, which is not exactly a fluke run anymore. The big wrinkle for Boston is still the absence of Jason Tatum, which changes how everything looks offensively. They might get Derek White back in the lineup after he was rested last night, and that would help stabilize things a bit in the backcourt. On the Bulls side, they are still missing Trey Jones and Zach Collins, but outside of that, they are about as close to full strength as they have been in a while. Boston needed 58 minutes to get past an ice-cold Nets team last night, double overtime and all, so there is a lot of mileage in those legs coming into this one. Here is the thing: if you look at history alone, you could talk yourself into the Celtics plus the points pretty quickly. They are the better overall team and have won 8 of the last 9 meetings with the Bulls, including a 14-point win earlier this month that was not exactly filled with drama late. So on paper, it is tempting to say, same matchup, same result. But basketball is rarely that neat, especially with this kind of schedule spot. The Bulls are as healthy as they have been in a while, with Giddey and others expected to play. And that extra depth shows up when you are facing a tired opponent. Chicago has also leaned into its home court nicely, with 14 of its 22 wins this season coming at home, which says a lot about how comfortable they are in that building. Boston, in contrast, is playing on 0 days rest after an emotional, long game, and that often leads to slower closeouts, shorter rotations, and the occasional mental lapse. So even though the Celtics are still listed as slight favorites, this shapes up as one of those minor upset, but not really shocking if you watch the schedule spots. The Bulls have momentum, health, and rest on their side, while Boston has the better resume but a lot of recent wear and tear. In a league where tired legs show up fast, especially late in games, that combination tilts this one toward the home team sneaking out a win and rewarding anyone willing to go against the brand name. As our first pick for this matchup, the Chicago Bulls to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The Celtics are averaging 117.2 points per game on 47.3% shooting, which shows they can put points on the board efficiently when their offense is flowing. From beyond the arc, they are hitting 37.1%, and they are at 79% from the free throw line, so they are dangerous both from deep and at the stripe. Defensively, they are allowing 110.5 points on 45% shooting, giving up 36.8% from 3, and grabbing 44.4 rebounds per game, which keeps opponents from getting endless second chances. On the other side, the Bulls are putting up 117.9 points per game on 47.7% shooting, so they are right there in the same offensive neighborhood. They shoot 36.5% from 3 and 78.4% from the free throw line, which is solid enough to keep defenses honest. However, they are allowing 120 points per game on 47.4% shooting and 36.6% from deep, while pulling in 45.3 rebounds per game. So they give up plenty, but they also have the size to battle on the glass. Looking at those averages alone, you might think this matchup screams points, and to be fair, it could get up and down in stretches. But context matters here just as much as the raw stats. Boston is coming off that double overtime marathon, which usually nudges a team towards slightly heavier legs and a bit more controlled tempo the very next night, even if nobody admits it out loud. Fatigue can mean missed jumpers, slower cuts, and fewer transition bursts, which quietly drag scoring down even when both teams have offensive talent. There is also the fact that both teams are capable of getting decent stops when they actually lock in. The Celtics' defensive numbers are too strong to ignore, and the Bulls' length and rebounding help limit easy second-chance scoring spurts when they are dialed in at home. So while the season-long scoring numbers lean high, this specific spot, with Boston on no rest and both sides having just enough defensive resistance, points more toward a game that lands a bit under what the projected total suggests. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Los Angeles Lakers versus Dallas Mavericks. You have a national television game that feels less like a regular season stop and more like an episode of prestige drama, the kind people argue about on group chats the next morning. The former face of the home franchise is back in town in different colors, the visiting locker room has all the star power in uniform, and the crowd is ready to turn every touch into a verdict. Underneath that emotional noise, though, you have something much calmer and honestly a lot more important for the spread, a healthier favorite that still has its two main headliners plus its starting center active and lined up to start. The only confirmed absences for that group sit in the role player bucket, with Austin Reeves sidelined by a left calf strain and Adu Thiero out with an MCL sprain, and that kind of injury report usually tweaks rotations rather than ripping up the script. On the other side, the home team is chasing a fifth straight win, which sounds scary at first, but the fine print tells a different story. They are doing it while missing a full All-NBA level big and a star guard, with Anthony Davis listed out with a hand or finger issue, Kyrie Irving recovering from left knee surgery, Derek Lively II on the shelf with right foot surgery, and Dante Exum also out after knee surgery. Daniel Gafford is merely probable with a sore ankle, Musa Sis is questionable with illness, and suddenly that interior rotation starts to look like a patchwork quilt rather than a wall. Fans love the narrative of they just keep finding a way, and that has some truth to it, but when you zoom out, this is a team stretching a run while asking a thin front line and a short-handed backcourt to keep punching above their weight. Now fold the styles into it, because this is where it gets fun. The visitors are built to live in the paint. They sit in the top 12 in scoring at the rim and sit second in the entire league in overall field goal percentage, which is basically a fancy way of saying their best players consistently get to their best spots. The home team, meanwhile, ranks dead last in points allowed in the paint, giving up close to 56 of those a night, and that is not a tiny leak, that is the defensive equivalent of leaving the front door open in winter. When a strong paint attack meets the softest interior defense in the league, you do not really need to squint to see which side has the cleaner path to good looks, especially across 4 quarters. The numbers behind the records add another small twist. The favorite carries a net rating that is technically negative but sits close to even, so their record is slightly prettier than their point differential, but it is still backed by a top-half offense that travels pretty well. The home team comes across as scrappy but flawed, the kind of group whose efficiency profile does not quite match the shine of a recent win streak, especially when some of those wins involve hot shooting stretches that you would not exactly bet your rent on repeating every night. That mix, a sturdier offensive machine against a short-handed, streaky opponent, is the sort of thing bettors quietly love because it gives you a path that feels repeatable instead of magical. Of course, environment matters. The home side has the arena, the faster pace, the crowd that still has complicated feelings about their old star, and that emotional spoil-the-show edge that you cannot plug into a spreadsheet but you absolutely feel in the building. They are leaning on a very young creator, wings asked to step into larger scoring roles, and a front court that has to fake 30-plus minutes of reliable rim protection without its best interior anchor, and that tension between energy and inexperience can turn a close game quickly. The favorite, by contrast, can afford to stay patient, lean into bully ball, and let the talent gap and size advantage around the rim show up possession by possession. Here is where the number itself becomes the punchline. The spread is sitting in that single possession to 2 possession band, roughly the 3.5 to 4 range for the road team at most books, which means you are not asking for a demolition, just for the better, healthier, more structured side to build a little breathing room. In a game where the matchup tilts so clearly toward the paint attack of one side and against the interior weaknesses of the other, the most common script is not a wire-to-wire blowout. It is a grind that eventually breaks open, often late, with free throws and forced fouls padding the margin just enough to matter. It might look tight early, it might even swing back and forth for stretches, but if the offensive advantages keep repeating in the same spots on the floor, that usually catches up with a short rotation that is already overextended. As our first pick for this matchup, the Los Angeles Lakers to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The books have hung this game total in the low 200s and 30s, with most places listing something in that 233 to 233.5 range, and on the surface that number screams track meet to casual fans. Big names, bright lights, national broadcast. It is easy to picture a pure scoring showcase where both teams just trade buckets all night. Here is the thing, though, when you line up how these two actually play and who is actually available, the ingredients look more like a slow burn than a fireworks show. The home team does like to run, they sit near the top of the league in pace, and that style does not vanish overnight. But they are also missing that all-NBA big and that high-usage guard, and those two soak up a lot of possessions when they are on the floor. With both of them out, more responsibility shifts to less proven creators, and while we cannot know the exact play calls, it is pretty logical that things slow down a bit when younger or lower-tier options are handling the ball more often in big spots. Fast does not always mean efficient, especially when the decision makers are still growing into those roles. The visitors live on the other end of the tempo spectrum. They rank in the bottom third of the league in possessions per game, and their offense looks happier in controlled half-court sets where they can squeeze out quality rather than chase chaos. That naturally pulls the overall game pace toward the middle, and when you have a slow-leaning team that is comfortable grinding plus a fast-leaning team that is suddenly missing a chunk of its offensive engine, the total points picture gets a little cooler than the headline names suggest. The scoring averages back that up. These two combine to put up around 230 points per night, and their opponents average roughly 233 against them. The current total sits slightly above that combined scoring profile, and at least one major book notes that their blended average is roughly 2 points lower than its listed total of 232.5. That is not some giant statistical edge, but it is a small signal that the posted number is asking for just a bit more offense than these teams typically deliver. Defense, especially the kind that does unglamorous work, quietly leans toward a lower score too. The home team has quietly built a profile near the top of the league in opponent three-point percentage, sits at the very top in defensive rebounding, and sits in the top 10 in overall opponent field goal percentage. That combination is brutal for overs because it cuts out easy second chance points and limits those quick three-point barrages that can blow a total past the number in just a few minutes. You are basically telling the opponent, fine, you can score, but you will need to do it the hard way, one clean possession at a time. The visitors are far from a perfect defensive unit, and on paper their biggest weakness is giving up threes. In this matchup, though, they are facing a team that sits in the bottom third of the league in three-point percentage, so even the shots that the defense is most willing to concede are not guaranteed to turn into a barrage. That tends to produce longer, more deliberate possessions, with more probing, more trips to the line, and more coaching adjustments, which all eat clock without always inflating the scoreboard. Instead of a 130 to 125 kind of night, you are more likely to see something where the total lands below the expectation baked into that low 200s and 30s number, not by accident but because of how both sides are built right now. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Miami Heat versus Utah Jazz. The Miami Heat head into the Delta Center on Saturday to face the Utah Jazz, and it feels like one of those games where both teams are trying to prove they are not quite as bad as their recent results suggest. The Heat just lost to the Trail Blazers, beat the Kings, and have the Suns coming up next. They have dropped 6 of their last 9 games, so any momentum they find seems to slip away pretty quickly lately. Utah is not exactly flying either. The Jazz lost to the Spurs, beat the Timberwolves, and then see the Clippers after this one. They have lost 11 of their last 14 games, which is a long stretch of frustration even by retooling season standards. Injuries are shaping this matchup on both sides. Miami is still without Kel'el Ware, Tyler Herro, and Davion Mitchell, and on top of that there is that long list of players floated as questionable like Norman Powell and Pelle Larsson that makes their rotation feel a bit fragile. Utah has ruled out Georges Niang, Walker Kessler, and Lauri Markkanen, so they are missing key size and a primary scorer of their own. So you get 2 banged-up teams, both limping a little, which is probably why this game feels tricky to trust from a favorite viewpoint. And the Heat were really poor in that 127-110 loss to Portland, and that kind of performance lingers in your mind when you look at them as road favorites again. The trip rolls on into Salt Lake City against a Jazz team that seems weaker on paper, but clearly has enough pop to punish you if you take them lightly. Miami's history against Utah at the window is not comforting either. They have failed to cover in 5 straight meetings with the Jazz and are 2-5 against the spread in their last 7 visits to Utah, which is not exactly what you want if you are thinking about laying points with them. Utah's main card to play right now is offense. They are sitting with the worst defense in the league, which explains why they are 15 games under the .500 mark, but they can still score in bursts, especially at home. They have lost 4 of their last 5 games by double digits, including that 126-109 defeat to the Spurs, which looks ugly. Yet just a few days ago they turned around and beat the Timberwolves 127-122 at this same building, riding 43 points from Keontae George. He has the keys to the offense while Markkanen is out, and this stretch is a big learning curve for him as the primary option. The Heat, for all their reputation, are not exactly reliable in the favorite role right now. They have a habit of playing to the level of their competition, which sounds romantic until you are laying points with them on the road. 15 of their 22 losses have come away from home, so travel has not treated them kindly this season. Meanwhile, despite all the losing, the Jazz sit at 25-20 against the spread, which quietly tells you that the market has not fully caught up to how often they hang around or punch above expectations. The underdog has covered in each of the last 7 meetings between these teams, which fits right into that theme. Utah is 10-13 straight up at home, which is not great, but it is just good enough that you cannot write them off in their own building. Miami might be the odds-on favorite, but after watching them get rolled by a Portland side with a similar offensive style to Utah, backing them again in this spot feels more like blind faith than reason. If the Jazz get their rhythm going, and especially if Markkanen is somehow available, they are not the type to just roll over for 4 quarters in this matchup. With Miami short-handed, inconsistent, and on the road, it really would not be surprising at all to see them drop another one here. I am keeping my expectations low for this Heat group and leaning into the idea that the home underdog is live. I'll go for the upset here and back the Jazz to get the upset win. As our first pick for this matchup, the Utah Jazz to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. The Miami Heat are averaging 119.3 points on 46.5% shooting and allowing 118.3 points on 46.2% shooting. They are hitting 36.7% from beyond the arc and 79% from the free throw line. On the other end, they are allowing 34.9% shooting from deep and pulling down 45.7 rebounds per game. So you have an offense that can get to a high number and a defense that gives plenty back. The Utah Jazz are right there with them on the offensive side. They are averaging 119.3 points on 46.7% shooting, matching Miami's scoring average almost exactly. They shoot 35% from 3 and 80.4% at the free throw line, so they have enough perimeter and foul line production to keep games moving upward on the scoreboard. Defensively, though, they are allowing 127.4 points on 49.4% shooting, which is a huge number. Opponents are hitting 37.6% from deep against them, and the Jazz grab 44.2 rebounds per game. When both teams are sitting at 119.3 points per game on offense, and one of them is giving up 127.4 points per night, it is hard to ignore the potential for a high-scoring tempo. Miami's defense has not exactly been locking teams down lately, and Utah's defense is already labeled the worst in the league, so stops are likely to come at a premium on both sides. Both teams also shoot solid percentages from 3 and from the line, which means that good looks can quickly turn into runs, and fouls do not stall the scoring too much. Even with injuries in play, the offensive responsibilities simply shift to other scorers rather than disappearing. Keontae George with the ball in his hands for Utah encourages a faster, more aggressive style, and Miami's structure tends to find ways to create shots even when key names are out. Put together, the numbers and the way these rosters are currently built lean more toward a game where both sides get into their scoring comfort zones. That kind of environment usually pushes the total higher rather than dragging it into a slow, grinding contest. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.